Today I'll be installing ceiling lights in this bedroom that has been turned into an office to work from home. The room is very dimly lit, and after a few hours of working on the computer, it begins to cause eye strain. So I think having more light to resemble the lights of a typical office building would fix the problem with the eye strain. This room doesn't have any ceiling lights or ceiling fan wiring, so I will have to fish all the necessary electrical cable. I'm going to start by trying to find the location of the ceiling studs using this stud finder. It uses lights to help you see when a device is going over a stud. It's not always very accurate, but this will help to prevent me from placing a light right underneath a wooden stud. I'm using blue tape to mark the locations of potential studs so that I can begin planning where I want to place the ceiling lights. All the cables I will need to fish up to the ceiling will be connected to the light switches here, so I need to take off this light switch to begin preparing the cables. I need to be very careful removing the switch and to avoid the contact with the leads. There is live electricity running to the switch, and first thing I need to do is isolate the live wire. I'm using a non-contact voltage tester. If it's green, there is no live electricity. If it's red, the cable is live and needs to be isolated in order to continue working. I put a wire connector to momentarily let me film, but I need to use electrical tape because the wire connector is too big to pull out of the box. I need to remove enough drywall to be able to unscrew the cover of the box, and I used the new 3-gang light switch box to get a rough idea of how much I can remove so that I don't accidentally make the hole bigger than what I need. Once the cover is removed, I just unscrew the box from the stud on the right and guide the cables out of the holes. There is a stud above the cables that I will need to drill a hole through in order to fish my ceiling lights and ceiling fan cables. Using a couple drill bits, I start making holes through the wood until I think there is enough space to feed the 2 Romex cables through. I find a second stud blocking my path to the ceiling. I take a different approach to get around this one by carefully cutting above and below the line of the stud. Notice how I cut the hole on the side. By making the hole this shape, I can easily put it back using caulk or joint compound. Now for the stud, I need to shave off enough wood to be able to run 2 Romex cables down the side of the stud, but not interfere with the piece of drywall that I will be putting back. Again, using a few drill bits, I begin drilling and cutting away at the stud until it looks like the cables will run through. Now that I can fish my cable up to the ceiling, I start marking the holes for the lights. I measure 2 feet off both adjacent walls to get my center point. I then stick a drill bit in the center, and using the template included with the lights, I put it through the drill bit and begin marking around it. You need to be very careful when cutting the hole for the lights because you don't know what is on the other side. If I feel like the teeth of the saw catch onto something, I begin to use an upstroke motion so that I cut away from the teeth and not potentially cut any wires. You can see how I grazed this electrical cable on the side. I felt as I was cutting that the teeth began to grab something else other than the drywall. So I began using an upstroke motion to finish cutting the hole. If I would have continued to cut up and down, surely I would have cut straight through the cable, causing a short and then having to fix the problem. Also, I was planning to move the smoke detector away from the light, but it looks like it's staying right where it's at because I do not want to move all this. I finished cutting all 4 holes for the lights, and I also made a hole in the ceiling where my ceiling fan cable will come down through. The ceiling fan electrical cable is different from the lights because it's made to carry 1 additional line to power the fan and the light fixture individually. The black cable will give electricity to the fan and the red one for the light. And the white and ground wires get attached to all the other white and ground wires. To help me fish all the wires through each hole and up to the ceiling, I will be using this endoscope I got on Amazon. This is a lifesaver tool because it will let me see up inside the ceiling and be able to grab onto my other tools I will be using to fish the cable with. First cable that I will be fishing through is a 3-way ceiling fan cable, and I'll be using the first light hole to help me redirect down to the wall into the light switches. I have all my cables ready now. This is the live wire where everything will get electricity from. These wires give electricity to the hallway bathroom here to power the light and exhaust fan in there. These wires go to the outlets in this room. The light switch that was here was connected to that red wire that would power on and off one of the outlets for something like a floor lamp. These other wires are going to be for the ceiling fan, and finally, these are the ones that will feed into the 4 ceiling lights. I ran all the wires through this 3-gang light switch box. I used yellow tape to keep them all straight and make it easier to work with. Back at the ceiling, I fished cable through the 2 holes and get ready to wire up the light housing. These lights come with their individual junction box where the electrical cables will tie into. And that's just me doing a quick drop test for quality assurance. And a few minutes later, I got my first light installed. 3 more to go. Here is a closer look of how the junction boxes are prepared. There are tabs on the side of the box that you can take off with a screwdriver. You need to purchase the cable clamps that secure the cable to the junction box separately. You unscrew the washer, put the cable clamp threads through, and screw the washer nut back on. The cable can then be fed into the box, and you can use the screws to clamp the cable down and keep everything sturdy. For the first ceiling light, I have 4 cables that will tie in together. I have 3 cables going through the wire clamp. One of them will be the live wire that will power all the lights. The other 2 are the adjacent lights running from this one. And the 4th set of cables are the ones on this junction box for this light. I had to remove the included connectors because there is only enough space for 3 wires. It was a very tight fit, but eventually I got them all tied together. It was about 11 p.m. that I started to wire up the switches, and I began to really get confused where everything needed to go. I went online and found this handy diagram. I also looked up a diagram for the ceiling fan and light fixture. After wiring up all the switches, I carefully bury all the wires in the box and begin testing the switches to make sure everything's okay. This switch is attached to the black wire, which will give power to the ceiling fan. I test the second switch as well, which will power the light fixture. As you can see, now the tester is no longer picking up electricity on the black wire, and it's now telling me the red wire is live. So finally, everything is done. All the lights are installed. All the switches are wired up. I got the floor lamps turned on because I want to test the difference that the new ceiling lights will make. Without the ceiling lights turned on, you can see pockets of shadows in the corners. There is a decent amount of light in the room, but it's just not enough. But as soon as you turn on the ceiling lights, you can see how the room is flooded with the abundant light. The floor really begins to glow. It's difficult to capture the difference on my phone's camera, but you can look at the walls the way they turn pale the moment the light comes on. This is the brightest room in the house right now, and it's amazing. I hope this video has been helpful to someone, and if you stuck around until the end, thank you for watching.